Here.
Chris Colbert, William Gilbert,
Here.
Patricia Griffin,
Here.
Karen Kahn.
Here.
All right, thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, public comment. We have 15 minutes for items not scheduled on the agenda. Do we have any speaker slips? Public comment? All right, thank you. Notices that the Lease Review Subcommittee met on Monday, September 9th in the Airport Administration Building, and meeting minutes are posted. And on Thursday, September 12th at 5:30 p.m., the airport secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. And minutes, we have a recommendation to waive the reading and approve the minutes. A motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Stellar. The minutes are approved. Thank you. The consent calendar, we have lease agreement for Himalayan Taxi Services, consent to amendment sublease, lease agreement with Nanco Helicopters, August property management report. Do we have any changes to the consent
No
calendar?
changes.
That's right.
Move we accept the consent calendar.
Second. All right. All in favor of approving the consent calendar as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The consent calendar carries as presented. Thank you. Liaison reports.
Councilmember Rouse emailed me today and said that he probably wouldn't be able to make it, but wanted you to know that the Police Officers Association agreement was settled, and so both sides are pleased about that. And that our airport master plan presentation or update to council was complete, and they had a thorough discussion.
Okay.
And Mayor Pro Tem Michael Bennett from Goleta let me know that he's at the League of Cities conference this week, so he'll not be here.
Thank you. Administrative reports. Item 9, the triennial emergency exercise.
Okay, well, Tracy's going to give this little update to you. And as you know, every 3 years we have, as required by the FAA, a full-scale emergency exercise. So let Tracy take it over.
I brought a few pictures. They're from past drills, but I just wanted to give everybody a feel for kind of what will be occurring. As the director mentioned, the FAA requires every 3 years that air carrier airports like Santa Barbara test their emergency plan full-scale exercise. Oops. Sorry about that. The FAA requires that commercial service airports test their emergency plan every 3 years with all the first responders involved, and it's referred to as a full-scale exercise, and that is what we will be doing. And the goal is to exercise our emergency plan, evaluate the results, and kind of make improvements to the plan and work with the first responders. You can get an idea of kind of what goes on with fire, ambulance, police, paramedics, so it'll be a busy scene. We also test coordination of the interagency response as well as the unified command, because in the field we do form a unified command with the airport and the fire department, and then the police department usually joins in as well. But initially it's always airport and fire department together out there, and it's worked well, and we expect it to work well in this drill as well. And then we have several checklists that are used, and we use these checklists during the response, and then we kind of evaluate and see if we need to revise some of them. And you can see there are several, and they're important. And the objectives. We are also going to exercise the Family Assistance Plan. It's a federal requirement for airlines and Red Cross to team up and provide kind of comfort and counseling while friends and family wait to get information. And it takes the airline a while to do that. So the airport coordinates to set up an interim facility while the airline usually nabs an entire hotel and conference room, and they have teams that come down. We've partnered with UCSB, and we will be exercising that coordination point. And then the Airport Department Operating Center, which is the room you're sitting in, we set it up with tables. It's wired for computer, and It's an emergency operations center is actually what it is, and we will also be using that during the drill. The scenario is similar to past years and very similar to what happens at airports when a real incident does occur. A regional jet landing runway 7, 70 passengers, 4 crew. The plane's going to crash at 9, and we do expect clear skies with winds light and variable. And the scenario is there's no alert, there's no warning. It touches down, left gear goes, it veers off and comes to rest on a ramp. Participants, I mentioned all the first responders. In order for us to have a successful exercise in the eyes of the FAA, they want to see the first responders outlined in the emergency plan participating. And the city of Santa Barbara has 3 or 4 departments: airport, fire, police, our public information team, the city TV, crack squad that they are do a good job here. They'll be out there and they do a great job filming the drills for us. Santa Barbara County, they're a big player and they always help us out a lot. Fire, sheriff, the coroner. Poor coroner, he's always the last one on the scene. Everybody has to wait a few minutes, but they're always great about participating. And then the Office of Emergency Service for the county as well. The American Medical Response is the ambulance company. We all know the Red Cross, American Eagles, the airline participating this year. FBI has been involved in all the planning meetings, as well as TSA. MTD provides our bus that we use to simulate an aircraft. It works well. It has front and rear exits, side-by-side seating, center aisle, and the fire crews can walk through it without having to do a ballet and worrying about damaging the interior of an aircraft. Use an airplane, it's fun for the people watching, but the people actually doing the response have to tiptoe through the thing. And then AMPCO is our parking lot contractor, and they will, they're becoming part of our plan, and they provide shuttle up to the UCSB quarters where we will have our Friends and Family Center. And there's more. City College, we get all of our volunteers from City College each year. They're all EMT students. It's a great learning experience for them, especially if they pay attention to the injury on their card versus how they're triaged and treated. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes not. Signature Flight Support is letting us use their hangar and set facilities, and they do each year, and we really appreciate it. Federal Administration, the tower, they help kick off the drill, and we do expect an airport inspector from Los Angeles, our certification inspector, to come out and view it. And then Goleta Valley and Santa Barbara Cottage hospitals are participating this year as well. We won't actually be transporting persons to the hospital. It was just, that's a lot of money to commit that much equipment for AMR to a single drill, and they've got a drill in Santa Maria a few days before. But what we're doing is we're having sets of victims show up at each hospital. They'll get moulaged at each hospital, and then we have our victims here, and they'll coordinate the receipt of the patients into the emergency room, kind of on a timeline as if it had happened in the drill. And each agency invites or assigns someone to critique specific aspects of the drill. It's really important that they get, a coworker or another professional out there looking at how they do. And the FAA does have checklists that they like us to have these folks use, and so we do that. And then after the drill, as always, we have a debrief, talk about what went right and what went wrong, and kind of do our best to improve the plan before we have another drill in 3 years. And then it will be filmed. And once we do the critique, I mentioned that we'll develop a action plan to make improvements, to kind of fix things that went wrong. We try to get the plan together within 90 days after the drill, and it contains recommended training, and we also try to put together a budget on what it might take to make the fixes that we want to make, and they can't all be done overnight. A lot of it is having to do with getting different equipment or acquiring additional training for groups of people, but we try to get an estimate together in a timeline. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. The drill is October 9th, 9 a.m., Wednesday. That's 3 weeks from today, I believe.
I think that's right.
Yes.
And you're all invited.
I have a question. So is it a surprise to the emergency responders what time it is?
No.
Okay.
It's not a surprise. Everybody knows, and everything that's going to respond, even if it would be coming into the scene 15 minutes later, we pre-stage it here. They know they can't enter the drill, so if a staging officer comes up, I need you now, it's like, we're invisible for 15 more minutes. So we do our very best to kind of simulate that timeline. It's something the FAA also looks at. They don't want to see a drill and see that everybody was at the hospital in 45 minutes because that's just not going to happen in real life. So it's important that we try to make the timeline close to reality.
Is there any interruption to airport operations, either commercially or on the GA side?
We don't usually have an interruption. Every now and again, something may go on. We will close both the parallels, but the main runway will be opened all the time. It'll be protected with some barricades and, a safety person there in case somebody wanders. And all the participants are briefed well on staying in the area and who to follow instructions from.
Thank you.
And you issue a notice too.
Yes, we issue notims for the drill, notims for the closed runways. We get a letter out to the tenants in the impacted area some days prior, and Signature has always been really good. If you're in a hangar and you're going to be pinned in, you want to go out that morning, they normally will move them over to their ramp and let them park there.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, well, thank you for that excellent presentation on this very important exercise. Okay, item 10, the lease approach for 6010 Hollister Avenue and 521 Norman Firestone Road.
Okay, Ms. Johns?
Ms. Jones? Thank you. I'd like to give you a status report on the two vacant properties, 6010 Hollister, which is the old formerly Woolover tire shop, and 521 Norman Firestone Road, which is the recently closed Elephant Bar Restaurant. As you know, historically, the airport has always done our own leasing in-house with our property manager. However, due to the unique requirements of the restaurant and the prime location of the Woolover tire shop, we felt it was important to seek specialized services. So we developed a request for proposal and distributed that proposal to interested parties and real estate companies. We actually sent out 11 RFPs to those interested individuals and companies. The services that we were looking for to assist us include developing a property-specific profile, including full disclosure on the condition of the building, any issues that we might have, provide market update information analysis, provide advertising on a comprehensive venues that are normally used by real estate brokers, pre-qualify potential tenants for us, and then assist in the negotiation of the lease for the property. In exchange for that, then, of course, the city would provide either a fixed fee or a percentage fee, depending on the proposals that we receive. We held a tour on September 10th for interested parties who wanted to walk through the two buildings and see the condition. And proposals were due on September 12th. And on the 12th, we received two proposals. We had originally intended to hold interviews for at least a couple of the, depending on how many we received, hold interviews with the companies to get more information from them and get a feel for their operation. Unfortunately, we had that scheduled for September 19th. And as it turned out, that was a big event in LA, I think. San Diego, for the commercial real estate brokers. So we are changing that date and notified the two parties of that. The two proposals that we received, we came from Radius Commercial Real Estate and Investments, and the other is Keller Williams Commercial Santa Barbara. So we're looking at this point to try and establish interviews. I'm catching it from you.
Must be.
Excuse me. For next Tuesday afternoon. We'd like to proceed as quickly as possible in retaining commercial services. Any questions? Please. No?
How long has the Woolover tire store been empty?
He vacated the end of May. Mm-hmm.
And his lease expired.
Several years ago, he's been on holdover for, I'd say, 3 or 4 years.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll certainly look forward to seeing that move forward.
We'll keep you informed.
All right. Item 11, the fiscal year 2013 year-end review.
Okay. This is a preliminary year-end review for the fourth quarter financials. Actually, shortly after gathering information for the presentation this evening, I received a call from finance that had another adjustment. So it really is fluid right now until they actually get all of the journal entries completed. But at this time, I'd like to go over what we project our revenues and expenditures to be. Expenditures will change slightly. And then once the annual audit is completed, then we can come back to Airport Commission with the final set of numbers for the fiscal year that ended June 30th. So far, we had another good year. Revenues were $15.1 million, which is 5.5% above 2012 and 2.7% above budget, what we expected. This chart is a little busy, but it gives you the lines of business that we have: commercial, industrial, non-commercial aviation, which is actually general aviation revenues, the airline terminal, which is our concessions primarily, commercial aviation's the airlines, what they pay, and then interest and other. We did have some revenue sources that did not meet budget target. The terminal, primarily parking. I have a graph I'll show you. They're coming up, parking revenues coming back, but they were still about 2% under budget. The other item that is significantly below is interest. That number we're given by finance, but with the city's very conservative investment policy, I believe they told her they're getting 0.024%. I mean, it's just very modest. Other revenue, the 93.8%, that's our reimbursement from TSA and other revenue, and it's not that we're not going to get it, it's just slow receivables. So you can see we thought we would have a budget of $14.7 million, and we actually came in at 15.1. Commercial industrial properties are still doing good, even though we're going to see some decreases in revenue with the vacancies that we've recently had. But at year end, we still had the majority of our land leased, as were all of the buildings that are available to be leased. Our revenues are up 0.9%, almost 1%. And our collections remain at 98%, collected on time within the month that they're due. General aviation is still active on the field, although the operations for GA they're down 2.7% over the prior year. Total operations are also down 2% over the prior year. Jet fuel sales are up, so there's more corporate activity coming in. Avgas is down 1%, and GA landing fees, which were established several years ago, those are up 30%. And keep in mind, those fees are charged to aircraft that are 10,000 pounds landed weight or greater, and any on-airport aircraft that's used for commercial purposes, regardless of their weight. So our overall revenues are up in general aviation, however, 8.3%. Oh, thank you, Tracy. General aviation, local operations, you can tell 2011, 12, and 13, the GA is in the lime green or yellow, whatever color that might be, and the other are just aircraft operations. But you can see it's just slightly coming down each year. I think the total for this year, total operations, were about 103,000. total operations fiscal year. So you can see it's really, in 2012, it came way down, and it's still down in 2013. That is getting to be a concern. Fuel sales for jet fuel, as I indicated, are up and continue to grow, which is kind of an inverse reaction here. Our concession activity, this is the airline terminal revenues that we had mentioned before. The gift shop is 11% up over 2012 in revenues, and they are averaging $2.36 per passenger. That's in-plane passenger for their sales. Restaurant is up 13% over the prior year, and they too are at 3.83. And just recently, I think in August, the restaurant indicated that they were over $4 per in-plane passenger, which is really good. Rental car revenue is on target, and parking, as I indicated earlier, is 2% below our budget, but it's 10% greater than 2012. This is a graph for the gift shop showing the increase year over year. Same with the restaurant. They're really, our concessions are really doing well, I think. Parking, you can tell the impact of construction. But the growth this year is really, really appreciated. We had a budget figure of about $2.8 million, so we just came in shy of that at $277, I believe it was. Commercial aviation is doing well, paying good fees for the landing fees for the use of the airfield, and then also the building rental. We negotiate with the airlines every spring for the next fiscal year and adjust our rates accordingly. So each one of their lines of business is up. Passenger traffic, we squeaked by this fiscal year with 1% growth. We still are struggling with a reduced capacity. Not just, we've had some shifts in equipment, but we've also had a great number of cancellations going, especially to San Francisco. And we need to be addressing that sometime soon. Other revenues, as I said, interest is down, and that's not 2. That's a typo. It should be 24%. And then TSA reimbursements 28%, but we're awaiting those funds. Those are due to us by contract. As you know, with expenditures, we try to be conservative in our use of those as well. So this year we're 3.9% below our budget. We still have vacancies, so salaries and benefits will always, well, not always. Well, one of these days we will have a full, Tracy, full staffing. Materials and supplies, I'm just giving you a whole category which includes our engineering, all of our supplies and professional services. And we were 2.4% below budget in that category. Special projects, that's where we track the shuttle operation. It too was below budget. This is a chart showing you our annual budget, our year-to-date. This includes, because this is from finance, it includes carry forwards. Any contract that we had encumbered a year in the prior year rolls forward to this year. So that's why some of these numbers won't match exactly what our projected budget was, because it does include carry forwards. But even with that, we spent $14 million versus 14.8 budget. We are still carrying forward some encumbrances, contracts that are underway, and some purchase orders that were carried forward. So you can tell on the right-hand side our percent of budget percentages. So at the end of the year, we were 96.1% of the budget expended. Between the revenues that we gained and the savings on expenditures, I'm anticipating that we'll have about $1 million that will fall to our reserves, which will be used for future year budgets and or capital improvements. Thank you. Questions?
Well, thank you. Revenue greater than expense is always a good thing, and thanks for all your careful projections and management. Yes?
On the staffing, the salaries and benefits, you mentioned that we have openings. Are we actively seeking to fill them, or are we kind of dragging our feet to?
The biggest problem that we've had is trying to fill all of the airport patrol officer positions and
keep them filled.
keep them filled.
Right.
It's just been a struggle.
Is that because it's just kind of a stepping stone, or just nobody wants to work out at the airport because it's too boring? Not enough excitement.
No.
We don't want
We'll
you on
be
the
on
HR
Monday.
committee, I don't
Yeah.
think.
Tracy
Yeah.
can probably speak to that.
It's a tricky position to fill. We're because it's not a full academy police officer position. You don't always get those folks applying, and so we did raise the salary some, and we've raised the requirements for the position. But a lot of people fall out of the background check unless they're squeaky clean. It's difficult because they do go through the full law enforcement background check just like any police officer in the city would. So between the psychological exam, the background check, and just the kind of odd fit of the position, it's tough to fill. We've had over 100 applicants for a couple of positions. We've done a lot of interviews, run people through physical tests, and then they fall out of a background or they fail a poly. So it's a challenge.
Thank you.
The upside, of course, is by the time you've got them and they're on staff, they're really great. Every interaction I've had with them is really
And
excellent.
pleased to be here.
Unfortunately, the downside, as you probably gathered, was then you're filling the void with overtime pay, certainly the premium.
Exactly.
Other questions? Nope. All right. Well, thank you again for your great management of that. Item 12 is my report on the semi-annual advisory group meeting. As some of you know, twice a year the representatives from the various city advisory groups meet to just kind of update each other. It's a great meeting. It's probably one of the best perks of being a chair or vice chair of a committee to go to those meetings and find out what's going on. I thought that every one of the committees is always doing interesting things. I thought it would be useful just to kind of highlight some of the activities that are going on, things you may or may not catch, even as careful as I know some of you read local media. The Planning Commission is very busy with the average unit density initiative and implementing that. ABR is in desperate need of a landscape architect on the committee, so they have an opening there. And they are actually getting busier with the kind of an uptick in housing. I should mention ABR is the Architectural Board of Review. Let's see, the Parks and Recreation, they've had some renovations, Cabrillo Rec Center renovation, West Side Community Center renovated, thanks to a $41,000 grant from the Orfalia Foundation. They are adding a park ranger position at the waterfront, and they've just completed a Google Earth inventory of the tree canopy of Santa Barbara, so they can actually monitor that over the years and see how our tree canopy, which is very important, as we all know, to our Santa Barbara being as beautiful as it is. The single-family design board is busier due to the, as I said, the uptick in development there. Downtown Parking has been working on installing cameras and low-energy lighting and signage, and they've found that the duration of parking is increasing, which means people are spending more time downtown enjoying that, so that's a good thing. The Police and Fire Commission does have an opening on that, so if you know anybody who might be interested in that, I'm led to believe it's a fascinating commission to be on. The Water Commission reported, I guess, I think it's the completion of the $20 million upgrade to the Cater water treatment plant. Gibraltar Reservoir is unfortunately effectively empty, and Kachuma is less than 50%. So we're all certainly hoping for a lot of rain this season. Overall, the city has ended the fiscal year in the black due to kind of recovery, increase in sales and transient occupancy tax. That was helped along a little bit by the reopening of the El Encanto, and property is slowly recovering. While the city is in the black, it's being very careful. It is not going out and going on a hiring binge or anything like that. Half of the revenue will go to restore the reserves, and then the other half to the Capital Improvement Fund. And the city's still very busy dealing with the dissolution of the resolution or the redevelopment agency, and still looking at what to do with the police building as a kind of a chronic issue due to seismic issues and so forth. And some of you probably know already, Steve Wiley, the city attorney, and Chris Anderson, the director of public works, I believe I have that right, are both retiring. Both been there a while. There is a new ethics document, educational document that's been circulated. I think we all got emailed on that. And the city is still in the process of implementing its new financial management system, which I think it sounds like everybody's looking forward to, kind of brought into this century of financial reporting. And I think that's about it. There was mention of November 2nd, I guess Cabrillo Boulevard will be closed off for an Open Streets Festival. It sounds like kind of a big deal, and lots of other good things going on. That's just the highlights. All right. Thank you. And I think that brings us to the director's report. I'd certainly like to thank you and congratulate you on Monday's dedication ceremony of the Ricard Terminal building. It was a really great event. It was really wonderful to hear all the stories and see the family there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you for coming. And yeah, we had well over 100 people that attended. We didn't ask for RSVPs, so it was interesting to see. But yes, the family was very appreciative of the ceremony, and I thought it went really well, and certainly learned a lot about the man. That was good. So you ready for the director's report?
The director's report.
All
yes.
right. I'll just highlight a couple of things. I think most of the things actually were incorporated into our items tonight. Our passenger count was down 8% for August and down 4.1 year to date, which is pretty disturbing to us. Some of that is the reduction in seats overall that the airlines have kind of done progressively over the last couple of years is really hitting home. Also, as Hazel alluded to, we've had on the San Francisco route about 30 cancellations a month on that particular route. And the other airlines may have had one or two, but really that is the bulk, and that's something that we'll be addressing with United to see what can be done to curb that. Some of it is weather in San Francisco, but some of it is not. So we'll kind of see what they have to say. So hopefully we'll be able to, as the economy continues, hopefully to get better, see the airlines adding more seats, or even if they changed out to a slightly bigger aircraft, we'll regain some seats. Because our load factors overall are in the 80s and 90%, so essentially the flights are full. LA is a little lower than that, and there's one other route that's a little lower. But basically, like Portland is doing gangbusters. Denver's doing really well. So I don't know. If we don't have seats to put people in, it's really hard to grow our passengers. So more on that. We just mentioned the terminal dedication. Master plan, a couple of months ago, you had an update, and this week we gave an update to the Goleta City Council as well as Santa Barbara City Council. And now we'll be moving on to the environmental review phase of the project. So more hearings and so forth to come. Just a reminder, the annual recruitment for city advisory boards is in progress. Applications are due to the city clerk by 5:30 p.m. on October 8th. And we'll have 2 seats that will be open, and they can be at least both of them could be a city resident, but one of them could be a county resident. So if you know good candidates, encourage them to apply. The interviews will begin in October, and then with appointments in early December by City Council. So
Karen, the deadline date again is for
October 8th at 5:30. And I believe you can apply online. Is that correct? Online, so you don't necessarily have to take your application. You don't have to take it to City Hall, do you?
Well, you could email them, fill it out
And sign it, and then, oh, okay. It's not quite that online. Huh? I was thinking you could fill it out and just click it to have it go. Okay, well, we'll get there someday. And we will just had the kind of project start meeting with a contractor today for the rehabilitation project for 15 right, 33 left, so more construction coming up.
And we have that $2.6 million FAA grant.
Oh, right. And we got the $2.6 million FAA grant as well. So, and this project, the 15 right project, is a $1.7 million project. So, more progress on maintaining the airfield, and that's it for my report.
A couple of questions. The taxiway rehabilitation here, when's that scheduled to wind up?
October.
Okay. And then the other question was if you had an update for us on the baggage unloading delay issue that we talked about.
Well, it
months ago.
seemed like it had been improving. There's a new manager for American Airlines that's handling 4 of the 5 airlines right now. Frontier has contracted with a outside company. It's not an airline, it's a ground handling company to handle them. The new manager is well aware of what the issues are. He has met with us and heard, us relay what the issues are from our standpoint in terms of the complaints we've received. And he was working steadily on trying to improve the situation. And I hadn't really received any complaints maybe in the last month until we just received one recently. So hopefully it'll keep improving. Most of it, at least from our discussions with him and our perspective, is adequate staffing, particularly in the evenings, and adequate supervision of the employees that are working during those hours. So, like I said, he's well aware of it, and he's working steadily on trying to improve the situation.
Right. We in the community certainly appreciate anything you can do
Yes.
on that issue. Okay, any other questions on the director's report or questions for the director?
Great.
Well, thank you all. We are adjourned.
Great, thank you very much.